So our next speaker will be Melanie Ewan. And Melanie is an international speaker, a writer, a coach and advocate, and also the managing partner at Volition. She has organized and or hosted more than 100 pitch events across Canada and Europe, including global virtual pitch events. She received Startup Canada's 2018 Entrepreneur Support Award. She has co-created and facilitated Driving WinTech Canada, including 34 research events across Canada with more than 900 women in tech, and this project has been internationally recognized as a finalist in the Women in Tech Challenge 2019. And really, Melanie is all about supporting entrepreneurial people to thrive on purpose, especially if it involves helping people find their voice to tell their story. And so we are thrilled to be able to turn the tables tonight to provide this opportunity for Melanie to use her own voice to tell her own story. So Melanie,
thank you. Hi.
Joining. There we go.
Thank you. All righty. Okay. Hello. I'm just going to adjust things a little bit. I think I moved my chair, All right. Hello, everyone. It's really great to be here. I wanted to thank Startup Vancouver, Startup Canada, everyone who's come together to host this, because for me, this ended up being a really kind of rare opportunity, I think, to be forced to spend time reflecting on how I got to where I am and why I chose this path. I think the last year has been very difficult, and it required many of us, I know for myself, to really look at my values and my why and how I want to align those things with my business. But I don't necessarily always look back at the full journey and kind of think about like why I chose this path and why I'm still here. So I want to kind of lean into that story and appreciate having the opportunity to be able to do that. So I'm going to start with the how I got to where I am right now. Honestly, I think like many people I talk to, I had never even heard of entrepreneurship. When I was younger, it was not one of the things on the career list at school. I would do all those tests that they make you do, or they used to make you do. I don't know if they do anymore. And it would say I was going to be a teacher and or a counselor. And that was pretty much it. And I came from a family of teachers, so that was also kind of what was going to happen. And I didn't have any kind of role models around entrepreneurship around me. It wasn't something that was talked about even. So as a kid, I was very quiet, very introverted, extremely opinionated. I loved to climb trees. I hated authority or kind of being confined in any way, like physically or not. Like I didn't like to sit in things that confined me even. As kind of a running joke. But as I've gotten older and looking back on that, I kind of see that common thread throughout my life. So as I became a teenager, I was this kind of studious rebel who got straight A's that no one would have expected, had like black spiked hair, spiked bracelets, and organized youth punk concerts at a local hall called Sealand Hall in North Vancouver. And so there's kind of this kind of common thread where even leaving high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I took the path of not going to university. I got into two different programs, hairdressing and photojournalism. I was excited about, but I decided to forego both because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I also really hated the idea of any kind of conventional job, but I also moved out of my house when I was 16. So I had to find something to pay the bills. And if I ever wanted to go to university, I also needed to find a way to raise money for that. So I had this idea of I don't like conventional jobs. I don't do well in those kind of parameters. I was also this kind of Jill of all trades where I didn't specialize in anything. And at the time, that was still something that was seen as a negative point on your resume. And I also wanted to change the world, of course, or save the world, or whatever that looked like. I loved, since I was very, very young, I was really interested in environmentalism and sustainability. So I really appreciate what Mimi was just talking about. But I couldn't figure out how I wanted to do this. So in my spare time over my kind of like 16 to 30 years old, I got my yoga teacher certificate. And I was like, I'll help people that way. I worked with the Poverty Reduction Action Committee in Vancouver to help get BC's first ever provincial poverty reduction plan in place. I eventually did do my degree. I went when I was 24 and finished a health sciences degree in environmental health, became an environmental technician for a bit, where I literally jumped in dumpsters and went through all the garbage and kind of sorted them into different categories. And I was also a community manager at a really incredible Canadian charity called Music Heals. So a lot of different things, as you can see. I just couldn't focus. I was interested in so many different things all the time. And I perceived that as a negative thing, that I just couldn't kind of commit to one thing. And the message I really received at the time was that if you want to change the world, you have to do it in your spare time, or you have to go broke in the process. And there was this kind of this ongoing joke in my group of family and friends that I volunteered for a living. But again, that didn't really work out for me. I actually had to have, at one point in time, 10 different jobs just in order to get through my degree and still live on my own. And so I did work in the federal government for 10 years during this time. Started working there when I was 18, and I felt very disconnected between that part of me that really wanted to create an impact and didn't really know how I wanted to define that, and the job that I actually had. And it was just, out of those 10 years, half that time was incredibly difficult for me. And I burned out multiple times, and it was just there was a real disconnect. So fast forward to 2015, I was volunteering, of course. I was writing and for like a local online publication. And I met a man named Paul Broussard. He's now my business partner. He'd been an entrepreneur for 15 years. And I went up to him one day and said, "Hey, Paul, what is this thing called entrepreneurship?" We sat down for a couple of hours. He quickly learned that I didn't even know what startup meant. Like, this was something that was completely outside of the world of government and nonprofit back then. It was just not even a thing on the radar. So by the end of our 2-hour discussion, he asked me if I wanted to join his team. I did not take that opportunity right away. I was scared, and so I stayed in my government job for another 6 months. I got to know Paul and the team a little better and what they were doing. Found a way eventually to leave the government and still have some semblance of security. And then I spent the next 2 years kind of learning about the startup ecosystem and how my skills and my experience I had to date would actually apply in this space. And I kind of figured out right away that these were my people. These were people, and I could work with entrepreneurs and founders who were doing incredible things, and I could help them. So that drive or that interest in constantly learning new things all the time was actually put to good use, which is really exciting for me to learn that. But the term and kind of the road of the entrepreneur was still something that didn't resonate with me. At the time, it was very bro culture, still is, but I would argue it's shifted a little bit at least. So that hustle and grind mentality didn't work with me. As I mentioned, I was a yoga teacher. I was very into wellness for many different reasons, and predominantly for mental health. And so for me, that was just like, this doesn't work for me. So I hadn't found my voice. I hadn't really figured out who I was within this space. And I really departed from my kind of activist and advocacy roots. So in 2017, I'd been voicing this to he wasn't my business partner yet, but working with Paul. And he said, "Well, you know what? I know about this great group called Women in Tech World. That way you can at least like be doing some like give back, and you can also learn more about this Women in Tech World or Women in Tech community." So I was I'm very, very happy that I ended up working with Women in Tech World and volunteering with them. And they kind of shifted my lens a little bit. Now, 1 year before that, actually, we had launched our pitch events, which we've now done 103 of all over the place. And what happened was this kind of like coming together of having done the pitch events, about 20 of them at the time, and starting with Women in Tech World. And that lens allowed me to look around the world and see that more often than not, I was the only woman in the room. And when we looked at our numbers, we realized that less than 1% of our pitchers were women. So this started to kind of like speak to again that part of me that really wanted to do something, wanted to create some form of impact. I still didn't know what that looked like, but I was like, this is starting to speak to me, and I'm starting to see how there can be this kind of connection between this power and opportunity to create impact through building your own business. Hadn't launched my business at the time. I was still doing consulting work with Paul and his company called Elevator at the time. But because of this moment of the like, have you noticed that I'm the only woman in the room? We started talking to the community, talking to partners, realized that there was this myth around that there were no women in the startup ecosystem, and said, you know what, let's just put on a women's pitch night and see what happens. So that was February 2017, and it was by far our largest and most successful pitch event to date. So we had 18 companies that came to pitch. We had over 120 people who came to attend, and they were asking, when is the next one going to be? So since then, we have done 27 of them in 6 different cities. But really, like the moment for me was realizing that connection between this, that I could this entrepreneur space, if I had this business, I could learn from the community. I could continue that kind of work to create something. I could build something. So two other important things happened in 2017. One was that we founded Volition. So this is the company that I'm now the co-founder and managing partner of with Paul Broussard, my business partner. At the time, we have pivoted and shifted quite a bit from that time. But at the time, we were an advisory firm for startups. So that's kind of how people knew us. It was our tagline. We did a lot of one-on-one advising and hyper-local pitch events. And it was the beginning of startup world. So we were finding our way, things were bumping. We were figuring out like how our relationships work, how the co-founding relationship worked. We were figuring out how we worked together, what we wanted to build. And it was exciting and scary and all the things. At the same time, I actually 1 month after after Volition was founded, I left on the Driving WinTech tour that Leslie mentioned in the introduction, where this was Women Tech World. We went on a 3-month cross-country research tour and connected with actually 1,600 women, 900 in person, 900 or thereabouts virtually, and talked to about 1,600 women in the tech industry in both urban centers as well as rural and remote Canada. And for me, this was an incredibly eye-opening experience. Especially having worked in the government, in the area I was in the government, I hadn't had my eyes open to the experiences that women, the discrimination, the prejudice, everything that women in tech and business were experiencing at the time. So it's eye-opening in terms of seeing and hearing these stories day in, day out. But I also got to reflect on my own experiences and how much I had adjusted myself, my behavior, my clothes, to suit the rooms that I was in. And it also opened my eyes to the privilege that I had and still have from being an able-bodied white cisgender woman and a business owner. So for me, it was a lot of eye-opening at the time. It has continued to be since then, but it was really kind of 2017 was this momentous year of kind of, okay, this is a lot to take in, but really important for me to do so. And from this kind of experience, realized that, yes, I do. There must be a way. There must be a way. Now that we have this business, we have Volition, there must be a way to use this platform in a way that makes sense for us. And so what has the last 3 years looked like really since then? And a few different things. So one, have continued the research with Women in Tech World. We did, I worked with the Government of Canada on to help them on their Women in STEM strategy and did some community-based research that way. Also, I'm currently wrapping up a Men as Allies pilot program as well, which has been very, very interesting to learn about that perspective, something I did not know much about. So that's been really interesting. And then another thing that was pointed out to me yesterday that I wasn't even going to include as I moved to Europe. So I'm from Vancouver originally, North Vancouver, and I'm in North Vancouver right now, but I moved to Europe in 2018. The why being I experienced incredible burnout in 2018 after that research tour. So that 3 months of putting on these really intense discussions with women from the community led to, not right away, but led to burnout because I ignored the symptoms. So about 6 months after I came back, my body just completely fell apart. It was very difficult to move. Very classic kind of burnout symptoms that are just not good for anyone. So decided to not like run away per se, but I did mention that I've never liked being constrained. So I was kind of like, this is something I can do. I'm fortunate that my husband works in visual effects and we can kind of go to many different places. So we decided to go to Madrid, where I was like, this is going to be calmer with just the way of life. But I also wanted to learn about the ecosystems there, the startup ecosystems, the tech ecosystems. I wanted to grow my community. I wanted to learn what we had in common. Are they doing anything better than us? Kind of figure out after I repaired a little bit from my burnout, which took a long time, like 6 to 12 months. But I wanted to understand kind of what was going on. Of course, with COVID in the past year, I then got the gift, I guess, of learning also how to manage teams remotely, crisis management, learning about different COVID cultures, and in general, just learned a lot about what we have in common and what we don't. A lot of it is that we do have in common, the good, bad, and the ugly in terms of what started, how gender equity disparities, and many other disparities in the startup and tech ecosystems. So yes, it has been a rough year for this past year, but particularly with lockdown and a lot of moving around and kind of dancing around with burnout again. But it's also been an incredible learning experience, coming back to those values and the why again. So against all of this, the backdrop of all of this, the research, the going to Europe, all these different pieces, there was also, of course, continuing to build Volition and continuing to think, okay, I can, this is my thing. I can build, this is an opportunity. Having this business is this opportunity to build something. And we're working with entrepreneurs, but we can niche in different areas. I work a lot with women and youth in particular. And this is something that I can build and have a legacy in the future. And so within Volition, we did continue to listen and learn from our community, still are. And we expanded the work that we do, particularly with women and youth. And we tested things, we made mistakes. We did audits of our practices and events and all the things, and really pivoted within the last year to a partner-centric approach where we are able to then support other organizations within the startup ecosystem who are supporting entrepreneurs. So we get to now not have to like do the B2C, like let's, you know, the way that we're sustainable is by charging these entrepreneurs for advisory sessions. But let's find a way to make the advisory sessions free or very low cost for these entrepreneurs through these other programs. Like, let's not reinvent the wheel, let's work together. Going back to what Colin said about collaboration over competition, or not competition. And so that's been an incredible shift for us because we got to shift to like train the trainer kind of methods and building programming and getting to like support entrepreneurs in different ways and getting to be really niche about who we support. And in what ways and how we can learn from them. So it's been, I'm not done that journey yet. I'm still learning, still growing, still trying to figure out what that legacy can look like. But I think it's really interesting when I think back about why I chose this path and how people come to entrepreneurship for many different reasons. And I've heard many of them on the research tour. And since out of necessity, out of expectation, out of accident, many different reasons. So why I came was out of curiosity and a bit of desperation. But why I stayed was that it's kind of this build your own adventure and opportunity to explore and build something out of who you are. And that ended up being, to me, this really incredible opportunity. So thank you. I think I'm out of time. Is that the cue, Leslie?
No, that was that.
Oh, you're mute. You're on mute. Welcome back.
Proving the point that I was just talking about, which is that my computer is being slightly slow. So I was trying to get in so that we wouldn't have a lag, and we still had a lag. So there we go. Thank you so much. It is always so great to talk to you and hear your story and how you've gotten to where you're at. One of the things that throughout you had the theme of sort of wanting to organize the unorganized and jumping into sort of the fringe communities who have so much to offer and want to do so much that's not in that norm. Do you have any advice for other women or entrepreneurs who may have been told that, you know, what they're doing isn't the right thing, but they know that it is? How did you sort of start to own that?
Okay, what they're doing is not the right thing. It's so interesting because my mind automatically went to like frustration with the systems, and like that's something I'm trying to work on that element. But when you're being told you're not doing the right thing, like how I was kind of well, when I first got entrepreneurship, my family didn't really support it, maybe didn't understand it. I don't know. So honestly, for me, it was finding people to talk to. So really building your network, and this is true for everyone. And I always do kind of underline this and bold it and highlight it for women in particular, that building these really strong networks, it's really difficult. You're going to get into a lot of different rooms that you are the only one, that you are not feeling heard or seen, or you're kind of picked apart in many different ways. There's a lot of isms out there. So it can be really, really difficult. And for me, the way that I've been able to handle that is through Women in Tech World and my incredible friend and mentor, Ali Close. She founded Women in Tech World. She's incredible. And finding people who you can talk to in those moments is really important. For me, I also communicated very strongly what I needed and wanted in launching Volition with Paul. And Paul is, I see people in the chat talking about him. He's incredible. He is always wanting to learn and grow, and it's just like, teach me the things I don't know, because I don't know what I don't know. And we had a lot of open and candid conversations around what I needed. Even now, if I say to him and the team very transparently, this is where I'm at today. It's been a really difficult week, and I need to not be engaging today, or whatever that looks like. They know that we have a culture on our team that's okay, and that you can voice that, and we can talk about it. So it's been getting comfortable with those uncomfortable conversations, building a network of people I can go to, and then also trying to dismantle systems in my spare time, and not so spare time as well.
Your hobby is still having an impact, it seems.
Yeah, my hobby. I think it's so funny. People ask me what my hobby is, and I'm like, this is the thing with like building, and I'd be curious about other people here. The thing with building a business is, and especially when you built one that's like a reflection of you, then like what is the hobby? I mean, I'm trying to find new hobbies. I kind of want to like learn how to make jam and stuff. That would be nice, but
sounds good. It is. It's all encompassing, and you wear it well, and you're very gracious in sharing your knowledge and wisdom with others. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it was always a pleasure to hear from you.